Okay. Um, so we are live, and thank you everybody that's been waiting. Today we are joined by Žiga Judar. He's the winner of our recent challenge with KeyShot, and we just wanted to have a talk with him today and have him just share a little bit about his journey. And obviously we're going to dive a little bit more into the project that he did for our challenge, and we're going to have a little bit of a look in a minute into the actual presentation that he put together, as well as some of the thought process behind it. Just as a note for everybody watching, if you want to see the whole full-length presentations from the challenge, we'll also be releasing the full video of all of those as well. Really, all the finalists did excellent work, and it was quite difficult for the judges to make a decision. So it was definitely by no means sort of a giant win or anything, but it was like by very slim margins. It's just like, of course you did great, obviously, Ziga, but everybody just like did excellent work, and so, but ultimately there is one winner. So, but I just want to thank you, Ziga, for joining me today, and if you just could start off by sharing a little bit about who you are and some of your background, and just talk about sort of what you've been up to lately.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Žiga Judar. I'm from Slovenia. I'm a product and UX UI designer. As it's mentioned, I come from Slovenia. It's a small country in Europe. It's close to Austria and Italy and Croatia and Hungary. So let me just share my screen. I will show some pictures that I have prepared. Just a sec. Okay, I think it should be visible now. Can you see the images?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, great. So this is just a popular destination from Slovenia, near the capital, just to give you a glimpse of how it looks. But yeah, as I said, it's a neighboring country from Italy, Austria, Croatia, and Hungary. So we're here right in between. There's only 2 million of us, so we're quite small. But yeah, that's a little bit about my hometown. I grew up in Maribor, which is a neighboring country, or not neighboring country, but neighboring city close to the Austrian border. And it's the second largest city of Slovenia. And as a kid, sort of where my passion for designing came up was really from Legos. So as a kid, I loved to play with Legos. At the age of 6, I actually, oh yeah, sorry, this is an image of my hometown. I forgot to show this, but
it's beautiful.
Back to the Legos. As a kid, at 6, I actually bought this Lego Technics sort of Formula 1 car, and I started building it together. So I really sort of fell in love with tinkering and sort of putting things together. So that was a big passion of mine. And then throughout the whole middle school, I sort of went to a woodworking shop that we had in our middle school. There we were making different like RC planes, boats, cars, sort of whatever came into our mind, and really putting those ideas that we had in our mind into like physical things. And we experimented with materials like wood and some other artificial materials. So that was really the first time I started sort of designing, I would say. And that's when the passion grew even further. So after that, at the end of my middle school, I went into high school, and that's sort of when this connection with building stuff sort of faded away a bit. We had more exams and so on to sort of focus on. I sort of just built a few small things in my home, in my workshop at home. At the time, I was actually an active skateboarder, so I built a lot of skateboard ramps and rails and boxes and so on. So that was quite interesting as well. And then, sort of at the end of high school, when we had to start thinking a bit more about our future, and sort of where we would go to study next to the university. I always sort of thought throughout the whole high school, I was thinking of architecture as being the way I want to go. As the moment came to be that we had to apply for different universities, this is sort of when I started researching a bit more about what's out there. So before that, I only had sort of architecture in mind as being this design school that you can enter, but I then quickly sort of saw product design as also one of the options. And we actually have a product design faculty in Slovenia. But when I visited the faculty on their like open days, I wasn't really impressed. The organization was quite poor, and it was more of an artsy kind of faculty. So I didn't end up going with that, but I did find a private school in Austria called FIUnium, which had a really robust product design course, which I fell in love with right away. And sort of the results that they produced were really on a high level. They also worked with like different companies, worldwide companies like Audi, BMW, Cadher. This is just a few of the companies they work with. And actually the student projects, as I said, were really on a high level. So this is one of the BMW projects one of the students made. And that really sort of impressed me. So I really wanted to get in. And when the applications came to be, I started preparing my application, and at the time we had to sort of give in the portfolio and some other stuff. And the issue was that I just briefly heard about what the portfolio was in high school, so I didn't have any portfolio prepared. So it was a bit of a race to create a portfolio. And because the faculty is really like they only have 16 people per semester, I think. So it's really, really hard to get in, and you have to have a good portfolio. I sort of applied to the faculty, and I also applied to architecture in my hometown. And sadly, I didn't get into the FIUnium in Graz, but I did manage to get in architecture. So I then sort of spent my first year in architecture, and learned sort of the basics of designing and so on, but specifically on buildings and so on. And when the first year came around, I started thinking, okay, maybe I should apply again. Since now I do have more projects to show, I can sort of create a better and more robust portfolio. So that's what I ended up doing as well. And I applied a second time to the university. And unfortunately, again, I didn't make it because of really this tight number of people that can make it to the bachelor's. So I spent another year at architecture, and then at the end of the second year, I already had sort of 2 years in for the bachelor, and the whole bachelor program for architecture is only 3 years. So I decided to finish that. And during that period, I also worked for a company called Equalize, and I was working there as a UX and UI designer, building different mobile applications and web applications. I've been working on some really fun projects. So that sort of happened in parallel with the studies. And then in the last year of my studies, I actually went on a Erasmus exchange as well to Lisbon, where I spent half a year, also on a architectural university. So that was a really fun experience as well, sort of learning from different cultures and different perspectives and so on. Also, like Lisbon is a completely different space, different architecture than in my hometown. So that was quite interesting as well. And then when I returned from Lisbon, I wrote my bachelor thesis and sort of graduated from architecture. So this is actually the faculty in Maribor that I graduated from. It's a really nice faculty, also from the architectural point of view. So yeah, I did my bachelor's there, and sort of thought of the next steps or what I should do next. And of course, the faculty from Austria came to mind again. And I wanted to either apply for a bachelor to maybe start over a bachelor in product design, or to maybe jump into the master's already. So this was like where I wanted to be, sort of, to go directly into the master's. So I applied again, and who knew, the third time was the charm, and I made it into the faculty. So that was really great. I was really happy. So I started my master thesis or my master's studies in Austria. Oh yeah, sorry. This is an image of Lisbon. I forgot to show it before. But moving on, just a sec. Oh, this is a small image now. Okay. Well, let me just stop presenting then. I'll jump back in. Okay. Yeah. So after I got the confirmation that I can study, I was super happy. I started my studies in Austria. We had a few different projects with different brands, like Rimac, which is an electric car company from Croatia. That was a super fun project. We also worked with some other brands and different projects. So again, I sort of built on my portfolio. And then last year, this was my actually final year of the master's studies. I spent the first half of the year doing internships, or one internship. I did it at Bosch, in Munich. That was also a really, really nice experience. I met a lot of cool colleagues there, and overall was a great internship. I really enjoyed that. And then finally, for the master thesis, which was meant for the last semester, I also managed to score sort of a collaboration with Bosch. So I was working there on a master thesis with them, getting mentorship from them. So that was also a really nice experience. I'm not allowed to share any details about that because it's confidential, but yeah, I hope I can do that soon. But yeah, this was sort of my study years, and I actually graduated in October last year. So due to the pandemic and everything, that was also quite an interesting time to graduate, but we managed to pull it through. And yeah, now I'm actually looking for some freelance jobs in the product design space, and building a bit my portfolio and taking on challenges like this one. So I'm really happy that I managed to participate and go through the whole design process with you guys to the final product and manage to win. So that was a really, really nice way to start the year. And yeah, that's a bit about myself.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's always amazing and a pleasure for me to just meet young designers like yourself, as well as seasoned designers, and I always love hearing about just like the backgrounds and what inspired you and what propelled you forward to get you to where you are now. And so it's great to meet you, and I'm so glad that you could join our challenge and then win, obviously, and so what I want to do is I meant to actually cover this in the beginning, but just to give everyone that's watching a little bit of context, so we held a challenge with KeyShot, and basically the prompt was to design a hiking backpack in Gravity Sketch. Well, actually, to design it, and then you would submit your sketches, and then by vote in the community, we would basically find whoever who got voted the most, and then from the community, as far as the designs that everyone liked, and then those 5 finalists, top 5, would basically make their designs in Gravity Sketch and then render them in KeyShot. And then and how we reviewed these is actually the finalists created a presentation in Gravity Sketch in which the judges, which was Roshan Hakim, Nick Baker, and Noah Sussman, myself, joined in co-creation to review these presentations. So that's what we'll be getting into next, and going into Ziga's inspiration for this concept in his bag. If I could just, before we jump into that, I just want to ask you one more question, Ziga. How did you sort of discover VR in your process, in your journey, and almost coming to the realization that you could integrate that into your way of working? I mean, actually, I should say before Gravity Sketch, you never actually used Gravity Sketch before.
No.
So this is your first time using Gravity Sketch. But what was your opinion of VR before getting into this challenge? Obviously.
Okay. So I'm actually quite a technology freak, so I forgot to mention this during my sort of presentation. But I really love technology, consumer electronics, and that stuff. So things like laptops, cameras, drones, things like that. That's all the stuff that sort of interests me, and I sort of check that on the daily. So I was familiar with VR. I also had the chance to first try it out, just like from the game perspective, trying out Superhot and so on, and some other games. When I was working at the software company, so I think that was in 2016 or something. I just briefly had it on to try it out, and I was really impressed. But that sort of ended, and then the next time I sort of had the chance to play with it again was during my studies in Austria. We had a sort of VR setup there already, but we didn't have Gravity Sketch. We just used it for like presentations. So we would create a presentation in Rhino or whatever, then import it into VR, and you could sort of sit inside of certain things or see how they look like in real scale, right? And of course, we did some gaming as well with the friends.
Yeah, of course.
So that was fun, but yeah, before that, I didn't have any VR experiences like modeling in VR. So I was really sort of pumped to see when the challenge was announced. So I noticed Gravity Sketch from people like Nick Baker, actually. He did a couple of videos sort of demoing Gravity Sketch and so on. So that's where my curiosity picked. So I started following you guys on Instagram and so on. And then when the challenge sort of popped up, I decided to participate, to maybe get the chance to try it out. So I was really happy to hear when I got the chance to model the final backpack in VR, and that was sort of the pre-experience of VR for me.
I just want to ask you. You said in school you guys used VR for presentations. Were you using VRED, or what was the tool that you guys were using to present in VR?
Yeah, VRED was the tool that we used. I didn't present anything, but some other friends or some other students did that, and we had the chance to experience it. But yeah, it was, so because I studied architecture before, and it was a bit different than product design in Austria. Also different programs, like for example, I didn't know how to use Rhino 2 years ago. So I had to learn all of this stuff, and the other students already knew this, so they could play a bit more with VR. But I was still catching up a bit with the basic programs. So, but yeah, they had their projects in VR, so we were able to sort of look through it and experience it.
That's awesome. Well, why don't we, without sort of delaying it any further, let's jump into your room that you created for the presentations, and have a look at your work. We're gonna be looking at Ziga's process, some images, and then as well as the final model itself. Let's see. I'm gonna transition the feed here.
All right. Let's see if everything works. All right, I think actually I'm already in. I sort of set it up earlier, but I wasn't sure if it was going to just jump in, because sometimes it sort of goes out of the app. But yeah, I'm already inside the organization, so I'll just wait for you here.
Okay, I think we're here. Let's see. I'm now in the room.
I think you're breaking up a little on my end. I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's fine. It's fine. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, while we wait for Žiga to join us, so as you can see, this is the final design of Žiga's concept, and I'll let him explain more behind it. But we can just zoom out here and see a little bit of the presentation space as well.
Jaren, I can't actually see you inside of Gravity Sketch. I'm not sure why. Maybe you have to jump out and back in. Let's see.
Yeah, maybe try that.
Okay. Just a sec.
I can also jump out as well.
Please let me quit the app because I do have some issues. Not sure why. I tested it before and it worked fine, so it should.
Yeah.
But of course, this always happens when you
exactly
when you're trying to do something. So.
Well, at the very least, everyone can see the room from my feed right now. So.
Just give me a minute. I'm already jumping back in. Okay, yeah, now I can see that you're inside the room already.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, I see you. All right.
Yeah, so
just give me a sec for the images to load.
Yeah, sure thing. We got some nice renders around this podium here as well.
Yeah.
Well, Žiga, once you're ready, if you could just explain what it was like, the process, taking your sketches. So we have your sketches over here. Taking your sketch and translating it into Gravity Sketch, because I know that you explained to us during the presentation that this was basically your first Gravity Sketch model.
Yeah.
And so what was that process of learning Gravity Sketch and taking your design into 3D? Of course, you had previous experience with 3D modeling, so I think that sometimes helps. But yeah, what was that process like?
Yeah, so as you said, previous experience with 3D software, it sort of helps you think in a different way or how you're going to build the model, right? So one new thing that was with Gravity Sketch that I haven't sort of used before is sub-D modeling. So I won't go into details on that, but that was something different. So I had to sort of go around that and sort of learn how to model with that, right, to get nice surfaces and so on. So that was something I did a bit of research on. But essentially, I usually, in other programs, I start like this. I sort of create a basic sketch or different views of the product that I want to design. And then I start with sort of a wireframe model. So we actually can see the final wireframe model here. Maybe if I can just explain how I sort of came to this or how I translated the sketch into this, right? So usually what I do is I just draw over the sketch. So let me just pick another color here that will be more visible. But essentially what I did is I just used this stroke tool in points, and then I just translated sort of this shape, this basic shape, to get sort of the right angle and everything. So once this was done, I took the shape out and I started playing with the points, right? So if you go into edit mode, you can start shifting those points around. And I did small adjustments to really tweak it in and create this final form and shape, and started building it in 3D, right? And then you can start expanding to the other side and so on, using the mirror tool as well, to create the final shape. And then I just started building in all the rest of the lines. So if we actually move back here to the wireframe model, you can see all the different lines that I sort of built out to give a sense of shape and form and to see how the volume would look like. And then I started just looking at some details where there might be some issues. So what I ran into is, you can see this triangular shape here on the top. Just a sec, like this, right? So the issue here was that with the triangular shape on the top, this also translated to the bottom here. So I had to sort of get rid of this and work around it. So I started pulling the shapes out a bit more and seeing how this would all look like in the end. Also with the mannequin, I helped myself out to give a sense of scale and proportion, because that's also quite difficult in VR to have a feeling of how long, for example, this line here is, right? It's hard to get a feeling for it. There is a measure tool, which I learned about later when I already started building the backpack. But I helped myself with the mannequin that's inside the program. So that was an interesting thing that I learned. And sort of after this wireframe, I started blocking in some shapes using let me just check, the primitive shapes, right? So here you can select a square. And what I did was I just built a square here on the top. Let me just go into edit mode. I converted it to sub D, and then I started pulling this shape out just to get the frame built sort of in a rough shape. And then what's great about sub D is, which I really love. This is something I wasn't used to in traditional modeling or NURBS modeling. So in sub D, you can just hit a button and everything turns smooth. So that was really amazing. Before that, for example, in Rhino, you had to define the shapes and the different surfaces and make them tangent and look at the curvature of the forms and so on. But here you just push a button and the organic shape just comes in place.
Yeah.
So this really helped with building out the frame and this organic shape of the backpack. So I actually don't imagine how I would do this in Rhino. Or I mean, I could imagine, but it would take me much longer. And Gravity Sketch really allowed me to play with the form, pull this out a bit or in, depending on my liking. And that's sort of how I started building the backpack. And of course, then I build off of that, right? So, for example, for the fabric pieces, I used this surface tool, again in point mode, which was great. Oh yeah, you already extended the frame a bit. For the surface here, I just used the point mode. Wait, just a sec. And just roughly sort of build how this shape could look like, just to get a sense of feeling for the shape. Again, converting it to sub D then allows you to put more points in, and selecting all of those points can then help with adjusting the shape to your liking and how you really wanted them. So that's how I sort of built in the fabric pieces, also the straps and all the other details, and then came to the final product that you can see here on the left. I think that's sort of roughly explaining it how I made it. Are there any other questions maybe?
Well,
or maybe some questions from...
Well, that's something I want to say is if anybody has any questions for Žiga or for Gravity Sketch, please don't hesitate to ask them in the chat. When it's appropriate, I'll shoot him over to Ziga if you have any questions for him. But no, I mean that was a great explanation, and just a comment on the forum, and this was the the feedback as well from the judges when you were giving the presentation, which is it's such a simple shape, but it's deceptively simple. I feel like it's so elegant, and you really could add attachments to this if you really wanted, and have iterations of this that has more kind of like a modular sort of like could have like a modular sort of evolution to it. But yeah, just I mean the actual modeling of it was pretty simple process. It's just I think what made your design really stand out was just sort of the really unique shape, and sort of the elegant simplicity of it. And one thing we didn't quite get into was your inspiration, which was from Herman Miller. If you want to just maybe briefly talk about why you chose Herman Miller as your inspiration for this bag.
So let's jump this quickly to this image. One of the key sort of insights that I gathered from my research when I was thinking about how to design this backpack was I discussed this topic with a few of my friends who are hikers, and the main insight that I gathered from them is that they want something lightweight and sort of doesn't get in the way of their movement. And I started thinking, okay, what can this sort of be, or how can I achieve this lightweightness and great form? And I sort of thought of this costume chair from Herman Miller that I saw while researching a bit. And what I really liked here and what stood out to me was this super elegant shape that looks really minimal, but you can see the sort of structural component of it and how this frame acts as a supporting piece for the spine. So I thought, okay, as a lightweight and sort of lightweight ergonomic backpack that I tried to design, this was the perfect sort of inspiration for it. And I really like the fabric that's stretching between the frame that acts as this supporter for the spine as well. So I also imagine this frame sort of flexes based on how you're sitting in the chair to really adapt to your body. And this was sort of the main inspiration behind this image and why I chose to sort of start here. Then it's one more thing maybe to mention here is you can see this frame is really complex and has some really hard surfacing. So that was something I also took a lot of time. If we maybe go back here to the backpack. So all of these transitions here between the shapes, I spent a lot of time sort of figuring out how to make the surfaces look nice and the transitions look nice. Because then when you get into the final renders, so for example here on the right, especially this points and so on, they would show up quite badly in the renders if they weren't built properly. So nailing those down was really the key point here. But we were discussing with the judges and the feedback they gave me a bit about the frame as well, and how to take it up a notch as well, with some other details and surface adjustments. And I'm actually planning to do this in the upcoming weeks. So I'll post this on my Instagram channel, and if anybody's interested, they can follow along and see how this thing will evolve in the upcoming weeks.
Awesome. We do have one question that came through, and this is something I was actually wondering about myself, was how long did it take you actually to create the model for the bag, and how many iterations did you go through before you arrived at this particular design for your bag?
Okay, so as you can see, not a lot of things have changed from the original sketch. So what I did was mostly I was sort of playing around with the frame and to really get the shape right. And I took more of the time as well to sort of detail the straps and how this connects to the frame and so on. So in the sketch you can see that's pretty sort of primitive and basic, and then here in the final model, especially if you look here on this image, you can see the buckle, the strap, all the sort of details at the edges, at the ends. So this is then what I ideated more on. And of course the frame itself, right, to really get it to the final shape. So there was also a few back and forths between Gravity Sketch and KeyShot to see if the model is, if the model is presented in a nice way and if the surfaces are correct. Because that's also, for example, I'm using the Oculus Quest 1, and if it's not, this is a standalone headset, and the shading and so on isn't so powerful in this version, right? So it's really hard to see if you have nice shapes or not. So that was something I used KeyShot for, to really see the quality of the shapes. But yeah, to maybe jump back to the question, how long did it take me? It's hard to say because I was experimenting, and as you said before that, it was my first time using Gravity Sketch. So yeah, it was
a lot of new factors there.
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to give a number to in hours, for example, on how long it took me. But yeah, it was a learning process. So for example, the frame I probably redid like 4 or 5 times because every time I learned something new and how I can improve it to make it look better and so on. So yeah, the same goes for the fabric and the buckles, especially because buckles are quite detailed, and yeah, that's sort of
so
regarding the time aspect.
Yeah. So this sketch then back here. Sorry, there's a lawnmower out here. I don't know if anybody can hear, but this sketch though, was it your? Does that mean it was your first sketch then for this design? Like it sounds like you spent just a lot more time on getting the model right. And I mean, obviously you came up with a really great design, but does that basically mean that your this sketch was kind of like sort of the first sketch, or maybe the second sketch you did, and then you decided, this is it, let's just take it right into 3D?
Yeah, so I usually do the ideation part already on paper, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the decision making was already done here, and all the different variations were tried out on paper before I submitted the final sketch.
Gotcha.
But if I would had Gravity Sketch before, I could jump in earlier and start playing around here, because this is much more powerful because you can see the product actually in 3D. And for example, like I was saying before, this triangular shape that transforms to the bottom was something that wasn't clear to me in the sketch, right?
Right.
But as soon as I jumped into Gravity Sketch, this was the first problem that I could identify and really fix. And I think I would rather make a quick sketch on paper than jump into Gravity Sketch and start building out the backpack and ideating further in Gravity Sketch if I would have access to it before, right? So
yeah,
I think that answers the question. If I'm
mistaken. And I do have just a quick question. I actually meant to ask it during the presentations, but I completely forgot. But I noticed you have sort of like a continuation of the hard plastic sort of spine part of the interior of the bag here on the back side, and it's not in your final model. Is there a reason why you chose not to have that in the final model design?
Yeah, so I was thinking, I just use this because I saw a lot of reference images that most of the backpacks use this as padding for the back. But then once I started designing this in Gravity Sketch, I started thinking about it. Okay, as I said, this part wasn't really defined. It's quite loose. But yeah, when I was in Gravity Sketch, I started thinking, okay, does it make sense to sort of attach these pads if I'm already using the fabric as the supporting piece for the spine?
Right.
And also, so I decided to get rid of it and just use the fabric as the supporting pieces.
Yeah. That does make sense. I mean, when you look at your inspiration, I mean, that is what is going on the chair here. It's just completely, just a mesh, which is being used as the support. So, yeah, it does make sense. Well, thank you for explaining that. And I know it's hard to like add up. It's kind of hard sometimes to add up your total time spent in VR. I feel like because you could say, oh, it took me, it felt like, felt like only a couple hours. But then you look at the timer, you look at the clock, and you've been in VR for like 5 hours, which is something I've experienced a number of times. But yeah, it's just amazing work and such an elegant design. And so you mentioned before that there was some feedback that you got from the judges, and that you were going to iterate further upon this. So is that are you saying that's your next steps? Is that you want to actually like improve on this model and take it further? Is that kind of your intentions?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the judges gave some really great feedback on how to improve the design, and we're talking about, so for example, if we swivel around to the front, currently I have the zipper here on the front, but when we had the final presentation, me and the judges sort of discussed an idea when this backpack would open up like this as a clamshell, right? So I think that's an idea I want to explore a bit further, but that does limit then this stretch fabric here in the front, or not in the back, so to say, that actually acts as a supporting piece, right? So I have to give more thought into that, but I want to incorporate those details and ideate a bit further. Now that I won the contest and I have access to Gravity Sketch, I got the VR headset as well, so I can use Gravity Sketch more to ideate further and build on the details.
And I just kind of want to jump back to these renderings too, because I really, really enjoy looking at these renderings. They're just so clean and like pristine.
Thank you.
So obviously you've had experience with KeyShot before the challenge. What was how long you've been using KeyShot? Was that introduced during your education or during your time in school?
Yeah. So in architecture, we used ArchiCAD, which is a architectural version of AutoCAD. It's easier to sort of build models in there because you have the doors and everything sort of in place. And then we also rendered all of the renders in that program. And that was a really, I would say, a bad rendering program because you couldn't get nice results out of it. At least during my time spending with the program, I couldn't find good tutorials on it and so on. So then when I started studying in Austria, that's when I got introduced to KeyShot. So that was 2 years ago. And from that, I fell in love instantly with what KeyShot offers and what you can do in it. So I was really working hard the past 2 years to build on my skills in KeyShot, rendering different stuff. I'm also participating in the Render Weekly challenges, where I create different designs for example, I think currently it's you have to design speakers, but I'm not participating in this challenge because I had a lot of things to do for this presentation and so on. So, I'm using KeyShot, as I said, for 2 years, and in this challenge, maybe the thing to point out is really this cloth material that I spent a bit of time sort of exploring. And
it looks very realistic.
Thanks. So I'm using actually the real cloth material here, which is a generated texture. So it's not sort of usually how you texture things in KeyShot is you apply an image, and then this image gets sort of stitched all over the place on the surface. But here what I used was the real cloth, which actually generates all of these strains here. So let me just maybe draw quickly, just a sec. All right. So all of these little strains that are here are actually generated in KeyShot. And this really allows for this 3D effect of the texture. So yeah, as I said, I've never used real cloth before, and I really wanted to use this opportunity to learn it and really make a kick-ass render. And I'm really happy with the result and how it came out. So a few actually issues I had with using Gravity Sketch, the Gravity Sketch model in KeyShot was that the textures the surfaces aren't UV unwrapped. So I had to do this in KeyShot as well.
I see.
To get the right scaling and the right direction of the pattern, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you what the process was like using the Gravity Sketch model in KeyShot. Did you have any issues? Did you come across any speed bumps? And we always like to know these workflows and know where the pain points are in the process, because Gravity Sketch is not a one-stop shop. It's really a place for you to make your design and then carry on with it in other programs. And so, but the key component there is that it needs to work. When you bring it into KeyShot or you bring it into Blender or whatever you want. And so you were saying that the UVs weren't quite right. Was that just in KeyShot? Were you just recalculating normals or recalculating UVs or something? How did you mitigate that in KeyShot?
Yeah, so KeyShot has an option to sort of deal with UVs. So if it's simple surfaces like this, so this is just a flat surface here, right? Mm-hmm. You actually have to sort of select the border of the surface, which is sort of hiding here behind the frame. And then what you do is there's sort of a procedure. There's a tutorial on YouTube that I followed. So it was actually my first time also UV unwrapping this, but yeah, essentially you have to select the surface and then click unwrap, and KeyShot does this by itself. And then it's just a matter of finding the right scale for the texture that you apply.
I see.
So one thing I did sort of mess around with was you have different options in Gravity Sketch. So you can either have a surface, right, like this, or you can take, where is it? Yeah, you can take the stroke, and if you, oh, come on, oops, I jumped away. All right, sorry for that. Yeah, if you use the stroke like this, and you adjust it so that it's super flat like this, that also sort of creates a surface, right? And you don't actually have to unwrap the stroke, you have to unwrap the surfaces, right? Because for some reason the stroke already works with real cloth, but if you try to apply real cloth to this surface, then it just doesn't show up, it doesn't generate, so you have to do this step in KeyShot or some other program like Blender as well. There were a couple of tutorials on Blender as well that how to do this properly. And yeah, you can use either programs to achieve the final UV unwrap. Especially when you have a surface like this, the UV unwrapping gets a bit harder and you have to be more precise with it. But yeah, one thing maybe that I was missing is, for example, I know this is a bit harder to realize, but for example, in Rhino, you have this import model to KeyShot, right? So you can have a KeyShot file open and a Rhino file open. And if you change something in Rhino, you can then just import or update the model in KeyShot. So this is something that I would love to see in Gravity Sketch, but I can see there's a lot of technical issues behind it that have to be solved or find a way around it. So yeah, that's something that would, I think, make the process even smoother, because as I said, I was jumping into KeyShot multiple times to check the surfaces and if they're looking okay. So that was a bit of a tedious work process, but yeah. If that's improved a bit in the future, Gravity Sketch will be even a more powerful tool, and I think I will use it even more than just forming.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to comment quickly on the shading, that's something that I've also thought about making things in the Quest and Gravity Sketch. The shading, obviously you're limited by the processing power in the Quest, and so something I think we want to do in the future is have a more optimized shader that works better in Quest, so that you're still able to assess what's going on with your surfaces when working in Quest. And then in regards to sort of the importing, exporting. I think the team has definitely talked about more integration with other programs. I don't know if you know, but we currently have a Rhino plugin where you can basically bring in all your NURBS data and all of your proper data made in Gravity Sketch and import it in Rhino and continue working with the parametric workflow, which is really helpful. So I think a KeyShot integration would only be logical in the future. One thing I want to also comment too is like the surface that you imported. Was it a sub D surface or was it a NURB surface? Just curious.
Yeah, it was a sub D surface.
Okay.
Because it built everything in sub D, but yeah, that's something I didn't try. I didn't try importing NURBS, so I'm not sure if that actually improves with the UVs.
Yeah.
I haven't tried this out, but yeah.
But either way, it's an extra step. So, but these are the kinds of things that we love to hear and we love to talk about because it's because of these conversations and this feedback from power users like yourself and the community using it that we are able to make Gravity Sketch better and improve on it. I mean, it really has come to where it is even now. A lot of the new feature updates are directly from the community, directly inspired by the community, and a few are actually from some internal experimentation as well. So yeah, deeply valued these types of conversations.
Yeah. I also saw that a lot of new features came to Gravity Sketch, so I wasn't able to jump in and sort of discover all of them, but I saw this showcase that you have on YouTube, and it looks really awesome, so I'm really, really excited to jump in and start experimenting with the new features. I think that some great updates happened, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we love releasing these updates and these features, and we really try and listen closely to the community as to what is going to be the most beneficial, most helpful. And there are some more coming down the road this year for sure. And so just don't be afraid, everyone out there that's listening. Continue to send your feedback. Continue to send us what you would like to see in Gravity Sketch because we are listening, we are watching for sure. So
yeah, that's also kudos to you. I saw that. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say kudos to you. Yeah, first the whole support throughout the challenge. I already mentioned this before, but yeah, it was really great also from your side. The amount of work you put in and the communication with everybody, I think, was great. And it really shows that Gravity Sketch is built on a community and on community feedback, and I think that's why I love the program so much as well. And yeah, I can see myself using it in the future for each project actually.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for the kind words. And I mean, I'll admit this is actually the first challenge that I tried to coordinate and organize and everything. So I'm really happy to hear that feedback. But yeah, I mean, we really do care about our community, and we really want. I mean, the power and the creativity of Gravity Sketch just really does come from the community. So, it's just an honor to associate with designers like yourselves that are just taking this tool and going into the stars with it. So, well, I just want to thank you, Žiga, for briefly taking us through your presentation here and showing your process. Yeah, I want to just ask you a little bit about sort of your next steps. So I know you were talking about improving on this bag and continuing to improve upon it, but anything around the corner, or something that you're working on that you want people to know about, and maybe some other channels or places you want people to follow you other than Instagram, actually, which we have in the description as well. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I think there's a little bit of a delay between our audio, so it's okay.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question there? You were breaking up a bit, so.
It's fine. I think there's a little bit of a delay between our audio, but I was just asking, beyond improvements in the bag, is there anything that you're working on outside of this, any projects coming up, any place you want people to follow you?
So yeah, as I said before, or I mentioned before, I'm participating in these Render Weekly challenges on Instagram. So this is just to build up my portfolio a bit more. I want to explore some ideas and improve my skills. I'm also building out my website, which isn't currently available yet, but that's something, sort of a side project that I'm working on. And as I said before, I'm looking for new opportunities to work and collaborate with other people. So if there's anybody out there who wants to collaborate, I'll be happy to discuss some further ideas. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, we definitely have your Instagram linked in the description, and whenever you have your website up, feel free to just send me a quick message, and I'll make sure to put that in the description as well. But yeah, everyone that's watching, please go follow Žiga. He does great work, and we're just so happy that he could be a part of our challenge with KeyShot. Also, just stay tuned in to our posts and everything, because we definitely want to do a lot more of these challenges. So if you are a little bit bummed out because you missed being a part of this challenge with KeyShot, do not fear. We have more challenges that we want to be doing very soon this year. So there'll be plenty more opportunities to win prizes and jump in and be a part of the Gravity Sketch train. So, but Žiga, I just want to ask you one more thing, and I know you're very early on in your career, but this is just something I really do like to ask everybody that I interview for these talks, which is there any advice that you have maybe to a young student or to someone that's getting into design? Maybe they're like you and they had really a hard time getting into school. I mean, actually, I had a hard time getting into design school myself initially, but I persevered and finally got into it. But is there any advice that you could give, something that you've learned, thus far in your life that you'd like to impart to other designers?
That's a good question. I actually didn't think of that before, but what I would say is, as you said, getting into like a design school that you wish to be a part of or whatever, I think that's always a challenge just to the nature of it, and especially if there's limited spaces available and so on. So I think what I would say for the upcoming students and everybody is to keep on pushing, keep on sort of building on your skills, and eventually you'll be able to reach your goal as long as you have the motivation and you try to improve on yourself every day. I think that's something that will take you farther than you can imagine. So that's something that I want to put on everybody's sort of to-do list.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, I just want to thank you, Žiga, for joining us. And thank you, everybody that's been watching. If you missed this in the beginning, this will be available after the video is over, so you can go ahead and watch in the beginning. And then we'll actually be very soon releasing the full-length video presentations of all the 5 finalists. We've also been releasing each of the finalists' work each day this week. So we have 2 more to share. We have the one today and one more tomorrow that we'll be sharing of the 5 finalists from this competition, because we just really want to highlight their work, as they also did just amazing jobs. So stay tuned for that. And please like and subscribe our videos. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. So just go ahead and hit that like button, and it'll help YouTube promote our videos more out into the YouTube video ecosystem and get our videos out to people that might find them beneficial. So go ahead and hit that like and that subscribe button if you're not already. I just want to thank everybody, and thank you, Žiga. It's great talking with you. Please go follow Žiga and his work, and we will see you next time.
All right.